Imagine walking across what seems like untouched jungle floor, only for radar scans to reveal buried stone walls, sprawling plazas, and vast networks of roads hidden beneath the soil. For centuries, we believed ancient humans lived only in small, scattered tribes. But what if the evidence for sprawling ancient cities has been under our feet all along, ignored, dismissed, or erased by time? The truth may change everything we thought we knew about human civilization. For centuries, explorers, historians, and archaeologists have shared a common belief. Before the rise of cities like Uruk in Mesopotamia or the Great Pyramids of Egypt, humanity lived in small, scattered villages, barely organized and largely primitive. The idea that large-scale cities might have existed elsewhere, especially in regions like the Amazon rainforest or the African interior, was long dismissed as pure fantasy. Think about the countless legends we've inherited. Stories of golden cities hidden in the jungle. Whispers of vast kingdoms swallowed by forests. Myths of civilizations that thrived and vanished without a trace. For generations, these tales were labeled as nothing more than folklore, the products of imagination and superstition. Scholars often shook their heads, saying, "These are exaggerations. Nothing like this ever existed outside the cradles of civilization we already know." But what if those legends weren't fiction at all? What if they were fragments of memory, passed down by the descendants of people who once walked those streets, who once traded in those markets, who once prayed in temples that now lie buried under centuries of soil? The problem was never the absence of evidence. It was our inability to see it. Dense vegetation, shifting rivers, and centuries of erosion swallowed these cities whole. By the time European colonizers arrived in the Americas or trekked across Africa, what remained of these civilizations was invisible to the naked eye. The forest proclaimed the plazas. Vines swallowed stone walls. Roads were reduced to faint lines on the ground, indistinguishable from nature itself. And so, instead of searching deeper, the world moved on. The myth of primitive tribes in vast wildernesses took hold, shaping textbooks and academic thought for decades. The Amazon, we were told, was too harsh, too wild, too infertile to sustain real cities. Africa, outside of Egypt, was painted as a land of small-scale societies without urban sophistication. These assumptions weren't just mistaken. They blinded us from recognizing the faint but undeniable fingerprints of lost civilizations. Now, as technology pulls back the curtain, we're realizing that the truth was there all along, beneath our feet, hidden in plain sight. The first hints that ancient humans may have built large cities outside the accepted centers of civilization began appearing long before modern technology confirmed them. Early explorers occasionally stumbled upon strange earthworks, unusually straight roads cutting through jungles, or vast mounds that seemed too intentional to be natural. Yet, these discoveries were often brushed aside. Take the Amazon basin, for example. For centuries, it was believed to be an untouched wilderness where only scattered hunter-gatherer tribes lived. The prevailing wisdom was that the rainforest soil was too poor to support large populations. Yet, scattered reports from the 16th and 17th centuries hinted otherwise. Spanish and Portuguese explorers wrote of vast settlements with organized streets, bustling marketplaces, and even sophisticated agricultural systems. But as time passed, these accounts were dismissed as exaggerations, perhaps the fever dreams of desperate men lost in an unforgiving jungle. The same pattern appeared elsewhere. In parts of sub-Saharan Africa, explorers documented intricate stone ruins, abandoned city walls, and vast road systems. Some of these, like Great Zimbabwe, eventually gained recognition, but countless others remained ignored, either because they challenged colonial narratives or because scholars simply didn't believe advanced civilizations could thrive in these regions. Archaeologists who did take these clues seriously often found themselves ridiculed. To suggest that the Amazon once held vast urban centers was, until recently, professional suicide. The mainstream consensus was too strong, too entrenched. And so, vital fragments of human history remained hidden, scattered across the globe like puzzle pieces that no one dared assemble. Yet the Earth itself remembers. Buried beneath layers of soil and vegetation, traces of roads, ditches, and geometric structures whispered of a different past. Farmers occasionally unearthed artifacts while tilling fields. Pilots flying over dense forests sometimes noticed odd patterns from the air, shapes too deliberate to be random. Slowly, the weight of these overlooked clues began to grow too heavy to ignore. It was as though history had left us breadcrumbs, daring us to follow. And though ignored for centuries, those breadcrumbs were about to lead us somewhere extraordinary, because new tools would finally allow us to see what the human eye alone could not. By the late 20th century, the tension between myth and evidence could no longer be ignored. Too many anomalies had piled up. Vast earth mounds in the Amazon shaped like perfect circles, fragments of roads stretching for miles through dense forest, and ceremonial plazas that farmers accidentally uncovered while clearing land. Something didn't fit with the narrative of untouched wilderness. But why were these clues ignored for so long? Part of the answer lies in cultural bias. For centuries, Western historians placed the so-called cradles of civilization on a pedestal. Mesopotamia, Egypt, the Indus Valley, and later Greece and Rome. Any suggestion that equally advanced urban societies might have thrived elsewhere was treated with skepticism, if not outright dismissal. It didn't fit the story they wanted to tell. Colonial attitudes also played a role. To justify conquest, many Europeans framed the peoples of the Americas and Africa as primitive and uncivilized. Acknowledging the existence of great cities in these lands would have directly challenged that narrative. So instead, reports of urban centers were either erased, downplayed, or treated as fantasy. The silence of mainstream academia wasn't simply accidental, it was convenient. Yet despite the neglect, nature itself preserved a hidden record. Beneath thick layers of vegetation, root systems often grew around old stone walls, protecting their shapes. Riverbanks shifted but left behind the imprints of ancient docks and canals. Some soils, once enriched by ancient agricultural systems, still remain more fertile than the ground around them, a living footprint of lost civilizations. What we are beginning to realize now is staggering. Humanity's story is far older, richer, and more widespread than we imagined. The clues weren't lost. They were buried in plain sight, waiting for the right eyes to recognize them. And as we move into the next stage of this story, technology steps in as our greatest ally. With modern tools, we are finally able to peel back the layers of time and reveal what's been hidden for centuries. Entire forgotten cities, vast networks, and civilizations that demand a rewriting of history itself. For centuries, legends of lost cities lingered like ghost stories, haunting explorers but rarely taken seriously by scholars. Then came a breakthrough that would change the way we study the past forever: LiDAR technology. LiDAR, short for light detection and ranging, works by sending laser pulses from aircraft down into the forest canopy. The technology strips away the trees digitally, leaving behind a 3D map of what lies beneath. Suddenly, what the human eye could never see, the hidden lines, shapes, and structures swallowed by jungle, became visible in astonishing detail. In the early 2000s, LiDAR surveys over Central America revealed something extraordinary. Beneath what appeared to be endless rainforest were vast networks of cities, complete with roads, canals, and pyramids. Entire civilizations, long dismissed as small, scattered groups, had left behind evidence of sophisticated urban planning. The same revelation unfolded in the Amazon basin. In 2018, LiDAR scans uncovered sprawling complexes of earthworks and ceremonial structures, connected by straight roads that stretched for miles. What had once been described as empty jungle was, in reality, the skeleton of an advanced society capable of engineering, farming, and managing large populations. Satellite imagery added another layer of discovery. From high above, researchers noticed unusual patterns. Geometric shapes etched into the earth, ancient causeways slicing across landscapes, and vast irrigation systems invisible at ground level. These images told a story. Far from being wilderness, many of these regions were carefully shaped and engineered by human hands. Perhaps the most striking part of these discoveries is their scale. The hidden cities weren't small settlements. They were urban networks rivaling the complexity of known cradles of civilization. This challenges not only our view of history, but our definition of what counts as a city. For the first time, technology was forcing us to confront the truth that myths had whispered for centuries. Ancient humans may have built sprawling cities in places we once thought impossible. And these were not isolated cases. Similar revelations would soon emerge across the globe. The real power of these technologies comes to life in the case studies. Each discovery reshaped not only archaeology, but also the way we imagine human history itself. Take Cambodia's Angkor region, for example. For decades, Angkor what stood as a symbol of the Khmer Empire's greatness. But it wasn't until LiDAR scanning in 2012 that researchers realized the temple was just the centerpiece of something far larger. Beneath the jungle canopy lay an entire hidden metropolis, complete with reservoirs, canals, and road systems stretching across the landscape. The scans revealed an urban sprawl that rivaled modern cities in scale, proving the Khmer Empire's engineering was far ahead of its time. The Amazon tells a similar story. In Bolivia and Brazil, LiDAR uncovered massive geometric earthworks, ceremonial centers, and settlement grids connected by engineered roads. The scale suggested populations in the hundreds of thousands, thriving in what was long thought to be uninhabitable terrain. The discovery of terra preta, or black earth, enriched by ancient soil management techniques, further proved these societies weren't just surviving, they were innovating. And then there's Africa. While Great Zimbabwe has long been recognized, new technologies are showing us that it was part of a much larger network of urban centers across southern Africa. Ancient trade routes, mining operations, and city layouts are now being re-examined, suggesting a far deeper history of urban life than colonial narratives ever allowed. Each of these case studies shares a common theme. Sophisticated societies hidden in plain sight, their legacies obscured not by a lack of achievement, but by centuries of neglect, bias, and natural reclamation. With every new scan, our picture of the past becomes richer, more complex, and harder to dismiss. What's most striking isn't just the existence of these cities. It's the fact that so many thrive in environments long considered hostile to urban development. From rainforests to savannas, these discoveries reveal that ancient humans adapted and engineered landscapes in ways we're only beginning to understand. The message is clear. History didn't unfold neatly in a few cradles of civilization. It sprouted everywhere, often in places we least expected. The implications of these discoveries go far beyond archaeology. They strike at the very heart of how we define civilization itself. For generations, the story of humanity was told as a straight line. Small bands of hunter-gatherers grew into villages, which eventually blossomed into cities in a few select regions. Everywhere else, the assumption was stagnation or simplicity. But the hidden cities uncovered by LiDAR and satellites prove that history is not a straight line. It is a web, with multiple centers of innovation flourishing at once. In the Amazon, intricate networks of canals and fields demonstrate advanced agricultural planning. These weren't just villages scraping by. They were societies that reshaped entire ecosystems to sustain large populations. In Cambodia, the sprawling Khmer cities show that urban planning, water management, and monumental architecture were deeply integrated into daily life, centuries before Western Europe even conceived of such scale. Even more fascinating is how these civilizations adapted to their environments. Rather than bending nature to their will in destructive ways, many of these societies worked with the land. The Amazonian use of terra preta soil, for example, created sustainable fertility that still benefits farmers today. It's a reminder that innovation doesn't always mean industrialization. It can also mean deep ecological knowledge. And yet, despite their brilliance, many of these civilizations disappeared, their cities reclaimed by forests, deserts, or shifting rivers. The reasons vary: climate change, political conflict, disease, or the simple cycles of rise and fall that all complex societies face. But what unites them is this: until recently, their legacies were invisible, silenced by centuries of doubt. Now, thanks to technology, those voices are speaking again. Every scan of the jungle canopy, every satellite image of a faint geometric pattern, every excavation of a forgotten plaza adds a new thread to the fabric of human history. We are beginning to see that the story of cities didn't start in one place, but in many, and that humanity's capacity for complexity has always been far greater than we imagined. The next question is, what do these revelations mean for us today? The rediscovery of these hidden cities does more than expand our map of the ancient world. It forces us to rethink the very idea of civilization. For generations, history was taught as a ladder. Humanity climbed from caves to villages, from villages to empires, and from empires to modern states. But the evidence emerging from the Amazon, Cambodia, and Africa tells a different story. One where civilization sprouted in many places, often simultaneously, and in ways that don't fit neatly into the ladder model. This challenges one of the most enduring assumptions about human history: that progress is linear, moving ever forward from primitive to advanced. But what if history is not a straight line at all? What if it's more like a spiral, where societies rise, innovate, collapse, and sometimes disappear, leaving behind fragments for future generations to rediscover? Consider the Amazonian civilizations. For centuries, scholars insisted that the rainforest could never sustain large populations. Yet the newly uncovered networks of roads and settlements prove otherwise. These societies didn't just adapt to their environment. They reshaped it with ingenuity that modern science is only beginning to understand. Their story is not one of backward tribes, but of engineers, farmers, and builders who thrived in harmony with one of the world's harshest ecosystems. Or think of Angkor in Cambodia. Its vast water management systems kept populations thriving for centuries, until environmental shifts and political fractures destabilized the empire. Far from being a tale of simple failure, Angkor's history is a lesson in resilience, innovation, and the dangers of ecological imbalance, an echo of challenges we face today. What these discoveries teach us is humbling. Advanced urban life was not the monopoly of a few regions. It was a shared human experiment carried out across continents. And while many of these cities disappeared, their legacies remain embedded in the soil, the rivers, and even the myths we once dismissed. The question now is, how can we learn from their rise and their fall? If these forgotten cities teach us anything, it's that human achievement is fragile. Civilizations rise with brilliance and creativity, but they are also vulnerable to climate shifts, resource depletion, conflict, and even their own ambition. For every hidden metropolis rediscovered, there's also a cautionary tale. Take Angkor's decline. The Khmer Empire mastered water management on an extraordinary scale, building vast reservoirs and canals to feed its growing population. Yet when climate patterns shifted, bringing cycles of drought and flooding. The very system that had sustained them became their weakness. Infrastructure crumbled, food security faltered, and the empire fractured. It's a story that sounds eerily familiar in today's age of climate instability. In the Amazon, societies thrived on ingenious soil enrichment techniques that created terra preta, fertile black earth still productive centuries later. But when European diseases spread through the Americas after contact, populations collapsed, leaving their once thriving cities to be consumed by the jungle. The lesson here is stark. External shocks, whether environmental or biological, can dismantle even the most resilient societies. Africa, too, holds stories of both rise and decline. Cities tied into vast trade networks flourished, connecting local economies to distant worlds. But shifts in trade routes, combined with political turmoil and colonial disruption, left many of these urban centers to fade from memory. Their ruins remind us that prosperity is never guaranteed. It must be sustained through balance and adaptation. The echoes of these stories reach us today. Our own cities, from New York to Lagos, from London to Sao Paulo, rely on complex systems of infrastructure, agriculture, and trade that seem permanent. But history shows us they are not. Just like the Khmer engineers or the Amazonian farmers, we are deeply tied to the stability of our environment and the resilience of our systems. So, what do these rediscovered civilizations truly tell us? That greatness is not enough. Survival depends on balance between people and nature, between growth and sustainability, between ambition and humility. The rediscovery of these hidden cities isn't just about rewriting history. It's about reframing our future. Each city, each ruin, each buried road teaches us that civilization is not defined by skyscrapers or technology alone, but by the ways humans adapt, innovate, and connect with their environment. When we look at the Amazonian societies, we see people who transformed one of the toughest ecosystems on Earth into a thriving home for hundreds of thousands without destroying it. Their creation of sustainable soils and managed forests demonstrates a kind of wisdom we often overlook today. In Angkor, we see the brilliance of water engineering, but also the warning of what happens when systems can't withstand environmental change. And in Africa, the resilience of trade-based cities shows us the importance of connection and cooperation across regions. These lessons are more than academic. In a world grappling with climate change, resource scarcity, and urban overcrowding, the forgotten cities remind us that solutions may not always lie in the future. They may lie in the past. Ancient humans experimented with sustainability, adaptation, and resilience in ways we can still learn from. Their successes and failures are blueprints for our own survival. But perhaps the greatest lesson is humility. For too long, history has been told as if only a few chosen regions produced true civilization, while the rest of humanity lingered in shadows. The truth is far richer. Human beings everywhere have always been innovators, creators, and builders of complexity. We are not the peak of progress. We are just the latest chapter in a much older story. So when we walk through modern cities, surrounded by glass towers and neon lights, we should remember, we are not the first. Others came before us, building cities of stone, soil, and water. Some thrived for centuries. Others fell to time. And one day, our own cities may too become ruins, waiting for future eyes to rediscover them. The story of hidden cities reminds us that the past is not gone. It is alive, whispering through the soil, urging us to listen. So, what do these discoveries ultimately tell us? That the story of humanity is far older, richer, and more complex than we've ever been taught. The great cities of the Amazon, the vast networks of Angkor, the forgotten metropolises of Africa, they weren't anomalies. They were proof that human beings, no matter where they lived, have always carried the spark of innovation and the drive to create something bigger than themselves. But there's also a humbling truth. Civilizations don't last forever. The jungle swallows stone walls. Rivers shift and erase roads. Generations forget. What endures is not the permanence of cities, but the lessons they leave behind. Lessons about balance, resilience, and the fragility of greatness. Today, we stand in our own sprawling urban world, believing our cities to be eternal. But history whispers otherwise. If ancient humans built and lost their great cities, what does that mean for us? Will future generations look back on our skyscrapers as we now look at the ruins buried in the forest, symbols of ambition, ingenuity, and perhaps arrogance? The hidden cities challenge us to think bigger and deeper, not just about the past, but about the choices we're making now. Will we repeat their mistakes, or will we learn from their wisdom? And that's where I turn the question to you. What do you think these discoveries say about us today? Do they make you hopeful that humanity has always found ways to thrive? Or do they make you cautious that collapse is always just around the corner? If this journey through forgotten civilizations made you rethink our shared history, don't forget to subscribe to Before Us for more stories that uncover the mysteries buried beneath time. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear what you believe these hidden cities mean for our future. Because in the end, the past isn't just behind us. It's beneath us, around us, and within us. And it's still speaking, if we're willing to listen.